This is a segue to a story that everybody's been talking about this week. Clive Bundy became an overnight sensation, a TV symbol of government overreach during a confrontation with federal authorities at his Nevada ranch, especially in the conservative media, especially on Fox News. But the tone of the story has sharply changed since a New York Times correspondent reported on some outrageously racist comments at the ranch. Bundy was talking about seeing black families at a local public housing project.
I want to tell you one more thing I know about the Negro. The older people and the kids, and there's always at least a half a dozen people sitting on the porch. They didn't have nothing to do. They didn't have nothing for their kids to do. They didn't have nothing for their young girls to do. And because they were basically on government subsidy, and so now what do? They abort their young children. They put their young men in jail, because they never learned how to pick cotton. And I've often wondered, are they better off as slaves, picking cotton, having family life and doing things, or are they better off under government subsidy?
Matt Lewis, this guy, Clive Bundy, was built up as a symbol of resistance to overzealous federal authorities. That part may be true. I got many hours of coverage on Fox News in light of these blatantly racist comments, when then he repeated them when he would kind of try to dig out of the hole. Was that a mistake?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm old enough to remember before Fox News, before the rise of talk radio and alternative media, and I don't want to go back to those days when there was this major media filter, but I think it is also worth asking, at some times, is a conservative media a net negative for the conservative movement? And I think this might be one of those occasions.
Why?
Well, Clive Bundy was a story before Fox News jumped on it and talk radio jumped on it. But what they did was help elevate him, to turn him into a sort of a folk hero and to egg the story on. And, of course, once he shows himself to be a racist, that ends up impugning the conservative movement, I think unfairly, but, you know, you could argue, hey, you guys built him up as some sort of a hero, and now MSNBC and liberal outlets will spend weeks on this, pushing the narrative that conservatives are evil, racist, mean people.
Well, we shouldn't apply it to everybody, but in my view, Fox News fell seriously short on this story on Thursday, all day long until special report at 6 p.m. Eastern. There was virtually no mention of these racist remarks by Clive Bundy when everybody else was covering it. And I think that to ignore a major story that was on the front page of the New York Times at a time when the network, among others, as you say, had devoted a lot of time to covering this story and to building up Clive Bundy, I think that gives ammunition to Fox's detractors. Dana.
Well, I salute your manhood for bringing this issue up, Howie. No, I mean, I think it's an important discussion to have because this was largely a Fox News-driven story. And so
you don't agree with Matt that it's a conservative media story? You think it's a Fox?
Well, it may well have been out there in the conservative, but you know, this is the 800-pound gorilla in where we are right now, and that is what put this on the radar screen for the whole nation. And
let's not forget, you know, the Bureau of Land Management showed up with lots of armed guards, and there was this confrontation. It doesn't take away necessarily from the argument that this guy, although he was a lawbreaker who hadn't paid his taxes.
I think it was somewhat foreseeable, and I think the problem here is people confused people who are interested in small government, the Tea Party, with something entirely different here. This is very far out on the fringe. This isn't Tea Party. This is anarchy. And I think people jumped into that without really thinking of where this was going to take.
President Obama said something very interesting about Sterling, the Clippers owner. He said, when they're ignorant people, if you just give them enough time, they will destroy themselves. I'm paraphrasing, but he just said that recently. That's what he did to Clive Bundy. I think conservative outlets and folks like Sean Hannity were expecting this to be sort of like a Ruby Ridge, Branch Davidian situation, where Clive Bundy would be turned into a martyr. And that might have been the best thing that would have happened for conservatives. Unfortunately, President Obama, I think, gave him enough rope to hang himself.
Let me jump in. So